The first time I heard my voice used against private, it was like listening to a ghost accusing itself. Reading minds, the room was dark, predicting except for the faint blue and silencing anyone who dares to resist. The screen flickering with the distorted audio Mara Quinn that someone somewhere hidden pieced together buried deep within the network. It wasn't just a recording. She realizes the truth. It was a lie built from every voice she hears might not be human. I sat frozen in my apartment as reality fractures tightly over my ears and what's programmed. As the words spilled out, Mara must decide, expose the same thing and risk vanishing, or stay silent. The voice was mine, become one unmistakably, yet fundamentally altered a sinister even your thoughts aren't your own. My name is Alex Mercer. I've spent the better part of a decade protecting others, specializing in the very technology now weaponized against me. Voice recognition, security. I knew the systems, the protocols, the vulnerabilities, but nothing prepared me for this betrayal. The hack was precise, surgical. Someone had stolen hours of my voice recordings, conversations, commands, casual chatter, and manipulated them into a damning narrative that painted me as a traitor. The knock on my door was sudden and cold, shattering the fragile silence. I didn't need to look to know who would come. Government agents, dressed in black suits that absorbed the dim light like shadows themselves, waited patiently. Their faces were unreadable masks behind dark glasses. One stepped forward, sliding a warrant across the threshold. Alex Mercer, you're under arrest for treason against the state. The words hit me like a blow. I opened my mouth to protest, but no sound came. The voice that had betrayed me now silenced me. They moved in swiftly, cuffing my hands, their grip firm but clinical. I was hauled out into the cold city streets, the neon lights casting strange colors on the wet pavement, the hum of distant traffic underscoring the surreal nightmare unfolding around me. In the sterile confines of the interrogation room, harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead. A wall of monitors displayed manipulated voice samples my voice, warped and twisted, accusing me of crimes I hadn't committed. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and despair. I felt isolated, a man stripped of his identity, reduced to a collection of sounds that no longer belonged to him. I demanded to know who was behind it, who had the skill, the resources, the motive to orchestrate such a precise and devastating attack. The interrogators offered no answers, only cold stares and repeated accusations. Their words echoed in my mind, blending with the false voice recordings that haunted my every thought. My grip on reality began to slip. Was I really a traitor, or just the victim of a cruel, technologically sophisticated conspiracy? Every shadow seemed to hide a watcher, every whisper a potential threat. I was trapped in an echo chamber of paranoia, where my own voice had become a weapon against me. Then came the moment I realized the only way to survive was to disappear. I had to escape, to run from those who sought to erase me from existence. Late at night, under the silver glow of neon signs, I slipped out through a narrow alleyway, the city's sounds muffled and distorted like the voices that now haunted me. The cold air bit at my skin, but I didn't stop. Trust was a luxury I no longer possessed. As I fled into the labyrinth of the city, I knew one thing. I had to uncover the truth behind the stolen voice before it was too late. The stakes were higher than I ever imagined. This was no longer just about me. It was about the fragility of identity in a world where sound could be manipulated, trust shattered, and reality twisted beyond recognition. I paused for a moment, breath shallow, heart pounding. Somewhere out there was the architect of this nightmare, Evelyn Cross, a name whispered in the shadows, a ghost in the system. She was the puppeteer pulling the strings, and I was the marionette cut loose, struggling to find my footing in a world of echoes and lies. The hunt had begun. and I was already running out of time. The sudden crash of the door shattered the brittle silence of the night, jolting Alex Mercer awake. His heart thundered as he scrambled upright, the faint glow of his phone screen casting eerie shadows across the sparse room. There was no time to process. Footsteps pounded the corridor, deliberate and unrelenting. Alex's breath hitched as the door burst open. Agents swarmed in, faces masked by cold indifference and the clinical efficiency of betrayal. "Alex Mercer, you're under arrest for treason," one barked, voice clipped and devoid of warmth. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists before he could protest, the metallic cold biting into his skin. His mind raced, trying to grasp the absurdity. The agent who had dedicated years to safeguarding the very system now accusing him. Questions collided in his mind. Who had orchestrated this? How had they turned his own voice against him? The ride to the detention center was a blur of sterile lights and muffled voices. Alex's thoughts spiraled into a whirlpool of paranoia. Every whisper, every echo of his voice on intercepted recordings seemed twisted into a weapon aimed at dismantling his identity. When they led him into the stark holding cell, the fluorescent lights flickered, casting long, unsettling shadows. It was then that he realized the fragility of his world built on trust in technology, now weaponized to obliterate him. But surrender was not in Alex's nature. As the guards turned their backs, distracted by the buzz of incoming orders, he seized the moment. Using a hidden blade concealed in his booter habit from years of fieldwork, he cut through the restraints. The agent's shouts filled the corridor, but adrenaline surged through his veins, sharpening his senses. He bolted, feet pounding against cold concrete as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors. Bursting out into the night, the city greeted him with its neon haze and relentless rain. The slick pavement reflected fractured colors, mirroring the fractured reality Alex now faced. The sound of sirens chased him, but he melted into the shadows, every step a desperate bid for survival. The chill of the rain mixed with the heat of his exertion as he leaped across rooftops, heart hammering in sync with the pounding rain. Safe, for the moment, in a cramped safe house, Alex hunched over a bank of monitors. His own voice echoed back at him, distorted and weaponized, a cruel reminder that even his identity was no longer his own. The recordings twisted words he never spoke, painting him as the traitor. The room felt suffocating, the bluish glow of the screens casting ghostly light on his weary face. Paranoia gnawed at him, whispering doubts. Was any ally genuine? Was the past he remembered even real? His thoughts were interrupted by the sharp buzz of his earpiece. A voice filtered through, warm yet laced with an undercurrent of menace. "Alex, it's me. We don't have much time. You're not alone in this. But be careful, anyone could be listening." The line crackled, the voice wavering like a fragile thread of trust in a storm of deceit. Alex's grip tightened on the device, the rain's persistent tapping on the window a grim reminder of the relentless siege he faced. He was caught in an echo chamber of lies and fear, where every sound could betray him and every silence could conceal a threat. As dawn crept over the horizon, Alex knew one thing with chilling clarity: there was no turning back. The hunt had begun, and the shadows whispered his name. The city woke, unaware of the fugitive lurking in its depths. Hunted not just by the law, but by the very voice he once trusted as his own. The game was set, and Alex Mercer was the hunted, framed, isolated, and running out of time. He had to find the truth before the echoes of his stolen voice erased him completely. But who was really pulling the strings? And would he survive long enough to expose them? The night was far from over. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and electronics, as Alex Mercer stepped through the narrow doorway of an unremarkable building nestled between the towering glass facades of the city's high-rises. The faint buzz of neon signs outside barely penetrated the gloom inside, where the soft blue flicker of multiple monitors illuminated a cluttered apartment. Maya Lin sat hunched over a desk strewn with cables, hard drives, and open notebooks. Her short dark hair was tousled from hours of concentration, and her observant eyes scanned lines of code cascading down the screens. When she looked up and caught sight of Alex, her expression flickered with surprise, quickly replaced by a guarded warmth. "Alex," she breathed, standing to greet him with a cautious embrace. "I wasn't sure you'd come." He forced a tight smile, rubbing the back of his neck. "I needed to. They're getting closer." Maya glanced toward the door, then back at the monitors. "You're not safe anywhere yet, but I've been digging. There's more to this than just stolen recordings. Someone's weaponizing voices, twisting them into lies, weapons of accusation." Alex lowered himself into a battered chair beside her. "I've heard the whispers, but seeing it, hearing it, it's like my own voice is betraying me." Maya nodded grimly, pulling up a series of audio files. The distorted waveforms scrolled past as she played a clip, a voice identical to Alex's, but threaded with threats and confessions he never uttered. The manipulation was chillingly precise. "They're using deep learning algorithms," Maya explained, eyes never leaving the screen. "It's not just mimicry, it's rewriting the truth. They can fabricate conversations, create false evidence that sounds utterly real." Alex swallowed hard, the weight of the revelation settling over him like a shroud. "Who's behind this?" A flicker of hesitation crossed Maya's face. "There are factions, some rogue elements within the intelligence community, others shadowy groups with political motives. It's a tangled web, and we're caught in the center." Suddenly, the monitors flickered as the room was plunged into darkness. The abrupt silence was broken only by the distant hum of the city and their rapid breaths. "Power surge," Alex whispered, his senses sharpening. The faint sound of footsteps echoed faintly down the hall outside. Maya reached for a flashlight, illuminating the cramped space with a narrow beam. "We're not alone." Alex's heart hammered in his chest. "They're watching us." They moved quickly, gathering data drives and securing laptops. Even as they worked, Alex's mind raced through every shadowed corner of his past, every trust betrayed, every ally turned suspect. The lines between friend and foe blurred as paranoia seeped deeper. Later, in the relative safety of the apartment, they pored over the voice files again. The more Alex listened, the more his own memories seemed to warp. He questioned events, conversations, even the sound of his own voice. The echo chamber was closing in. "How do I know what's real anymore?" Alex muttered, staring at a cracked mirror on the wall. A manipulated version of his voice crackled softly from a speaker nearby, layered with false confessions and veiled threats. "You don't," Maya said quietly. "Not until we expose them." Alex clenched his fists, determination flickering behind his weary eyes. "Then we start at the source. Whoever's behind this, they'll regret the day they stole my voice." But as the shadows lengthened outside and the city's hum pulsed like a heartbeat, the question lingered in the stale air. Could he trust even himself anymore? The night stretched on, thick with tension, as the allies prepared to face an enemy hidden in the echoes of a fractured past. The truth was out there, buried beneath layers of deception and digital lies. Finding it would mean risking everything, including the last fragments of Alex Mercer's sanity. And somewhere, just beyond the reach of the flickering lights, the conspiracy waited, listening. The glow of the monitor was the only light in the small, cluttered safe house where Alex Mercer sat, headphones clamped over his ears. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and old electronics, a scent that seemed to anchor him amid the chaos swirling inside his mind. As the distorted voice filled his ears, it was unmistakably his own yet. The words were alien, foreign. "I confess to the breach. I am a traitor." He pressed a trembling finger against the pause button, hands shaking as he tried to reconcile the familiar timbre with the damning message. It was a recording his voice, yes, but altered, manipulated with such precision that even his trained ear had taken time to notice the subtle discrepancies. This was no ordinary forgery. Someone had weaponized his very identity. The screen flickered as he replayed the audio, the waveform rippling like a treacherous ocean beneath his scrutiny. He zoomed in, searching for the telltale signs of tampering, microsecond shifts, unnatural modulations, layered overlays. Each anomaly confirmed his worst fears. His voice was no longer a marker of truth, but a tool of deception. A sharp knock at the door startled him. He yanked off the headphones and opened the door to find Maya Lin, her face illuminated by the glow of a portable device displaying complex code and spectral analyses. "I found something," she said quietly, stepping inside. "The edits aren't just surface level. They've embedded false phonemes and spliced segments to create confessions you never spoke. It's sophisticated military-grade tampering." Alex nodded, swallowing hard. Who would go to this length? "Evelyn Cross," Maya whispered, eyes darkening. "She's more dangerous than we imagined." The mention of Evelyn's name sent a cold shiver down Alex's spine. He had glimpsed her shadowy presence before, a ghost lurking in the edges of his investigation. Now, her influence was undeniable, a puppeteer pulling the strings behind the scenes. As they worked, Alex's mind drifted, haunted by memories that now felt suspect. Had his own recollections been compromised? Was the voice whispering accusations the voice of truth, or an echo chamber of carefully engineered lies? Outside, the city pulsed with neon life, oblivious to the silent war unfolding within its depths. Alex stepped onto the balcony, the cold night air biting his skin. He scanned the crowds below, every whisper a potential threat, every shadow a possible enemy. His paranoia deepened, a gnawing presence that threatened to consume him whole. Hours later, back inside, Maya pointed to a series of encrypted surveillance feeds. "Look here." Alex leaned in, watching as a slim figure appeared in the grainy footage. Evelyn Crossed herself. Her eyes, cold and calculating, tracked his movements with unnerving precision. "She's watching you," Maya said softly. Alex clenched his fists. "Then I'm running out of time." The weight of betrayal pressed down on him, a suffocating fog that blurred the line between friend and foe, reality and illusion. In this world where voices could be hacked, twisted, and weaponized, trust was a fragile currency, and his own voice had become his greatest enemy. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, Alex knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the echoes and distortions lay the truth he had to find before he lost himself entirely. The hunt was on, but the question lingered. If his voice could not be trusted, what remained of Alex Mercer? And somewhere in the shadows, Evelyn Cross smiled. The game was far from over, and the echoes of doubt would only grow louder. He had to hold on to the fragments of his fractured identity, even as the darkness closed in. The night was far from over, and the echo chamber was closing tight. The rain beat steadily against the grimy window of the interrogation room, a soft, relentless percussion that seemed to echo the pounding in Alex's chest. The cold, sterile light from the overhead fluorescent bulb flickered intermittently, casting long, jittery shadows across the cracked linoleum floor. Across from him sat Detective Ryan Holt, his furrowed brow knitting tighter with every passing second. The man was a tough silhouette, weathered by years in the force, with tired eyes that held a mixture of skepticism and something that almost looked like respect. But Alex couldn't be sure. "Not yet, Mr. Mercer," Holt began, voice low and measured. "You understand the gravity of the charges against you. Treason isn't a small thing." Alex met his gaze steadily. "I know exactly what they're accusing me of, and I know it's not true." The detective's mouth twitched, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. "You think it's that simple? Someone framed you?" "Yes," Alex said, voice taut, because my voice was stolen, manipulated. "You heard the recordings, right? They're fabricated." Holt leaned back, folding his arms. The room fell into a thick silence, punctuated only by the buzz of the faulty light and the distant rumble of thunder outside. Alex watched him carefully, searching for any sign of conviction. "I've been handed a file," Holt said finally. "And that file says you're guilty." But he hesitated, eyes flickering with doubt. "There's something off about this case. Political pressure. The brass want it wrapped up fast." Alex's heart quickened. "Then you believe me?" "I don't know," Holt admitted, rubbing his stubbled chin. "I'm a cop. I follow the evidence. But evidence can be twisted, just like voices." The detective's conflicted stance was a fragile thread Alex clung to. "Help me. We both want the truth, don't we?" Holt looked away, jaw tight. "Help you could get me suspended. Or worse, then we'd do it quietly." Their conversation was interrupted by the distant clang of a metal door slamming. Holt glanced toward the hallway, alert. Alex followed his gaze, sensing the unspoken warnings lurking in the precinct's shadows. Later that evening, Alex found himself alone in a cold hallway lined with flickering monitors. The murmurs of officers and government agents passing nearby felt like whispers of judgment. Holt approached quietly, lowering his voice. "You're not the only one being watched," he said. "There are eyes everywhere higher ups who don't want this mess uncovered." Alex swallowed hard, the paranoia tightening its grip. "How deep does it go?" Holt's gaze was grim. "Deeper than you think." Back in his cramped office, Holt sat before a flickering screen, reviewing security footage from the night Alex was taken into custody. The images blurred and glitched intermittently, subtle edits that suggested tampering. He muttered under his breath, frustration and doubt coloring his words. "This doesn't add up." He paused, rubbing his eyes. Who's really pulling the strings? Alex's encounter with Holt was a pivotal moment, crossing of paths between two men caught in a web of deceit and conflicting loyalties. Despite the tension, a fragile alliance began to form, shadowed by suspicion but fueled by the flickering hope that truth might still prevail. As Alex left the precinct, the rain had stopped, but the air remained heavy, thick with the scent of wet asphalt and uncertainty. Somewhere in the distance, a voice echoed, familiar yet distorted, reminding him that in this world, trust was the rarest commodity of all. "You're not alone in this," Holt's words lingered in his mind. But was that a promise or a warning? The game was changing, and Alex knew the next move could mean the difference between survival and complete erasure. The hum of the servers filled the cramped room, a constant, low drone that mingled with the rhythmic tapping of Maya Lin's fingers against the keyboard. It was a sound that had become both familiar and maddeningly persistent over the past few days. The blue light of the monitors cast shifting shadows across her face, highlighting the strain in her eyes. She leaned closer, squinting at the streams of code cascading down the screen. Something wasn't right. Patterns seen before now, appeared distorted, layered with subtle manipulations that suggested far more than simple tampering. Maya's breath caught as she traced the digital fingerprints, fragments of voice, data warped and reassembled with ruthless precision. This wasn't just an isolated hack. It was a sprawling operation, a carefully orchestrated symphony of deception that reached into the highest echelons of power. Her fingers hesitated, then resumed their frantic pace, pulling thread after thread from the tangled web. "Alex," she whispered into the encrypted line, her voice barely audible over the static. On the other end, Alex Mercer's voice was rough, edged with exhaustion and distrust. "What have you got?" "It's bigger than we thought," Maya replied, eyes still glued to the screen. "There's a pattern here, voice data altered at multiple points, linked to operatives we didn't suspect. This isn't just about framing you. It's a conspiracy to destabilize everything." The line went quiet for a moment, the weight of her words settling like a stone in a still pond. Alex ran a hand through his unshaven beard, his intense eyes darkening. "This confirms what I feared. But if it's that deep, who can we trust?" Maya bit her lip, the familiar flicker of fear surfacing. The government was watching. Voices could be hijacked and twisted, and alliances shattered with a single whispered lie. Yet, despite the chilling risks, she knew what she had to do. "I'm with you, Alex. Whatever it takes," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Their meeting place was a nondescript safe house on the edge of the city, shielded from prying eyes and listening devices. The air was thick with tension, illuminated only by the flickering lamp that cast long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Alex sat across from Maya, his posture rigid, muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike or flee. His gaze flicked repeatedly to the door, as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. "Have you heard from Holt?" Alex asked, referring to the detective whose allegiance remained uncertain. "No," Maya replied, shaking her head. "But I'm working on a way to reach him without raising alarms." Alex's jaw clenched. "We can't afford mistakes. Every whisper might be a trap." The silence between them was heavy, punctuated only by the faint buzz of the old fluorescent bulb overhead. Both understood the fragile nature of their alliance. Paranoia gnawed at Alex's mind. Was Maya truly on his side, or just another pawn in the game? Suddenly, a sharp, deliberate knock fractured the stillness. Alex's hand went instinctively to the pistol at his side. Maya's breath hitched. Every muscle in their bodies tensed, eyes darting toward the door. "Who is it?" Alex called, voice low but firm. No answer came, only the echo of the knock again, more insistent this time. Maya exchanged a glance with Alex, her heart pounding. The safe house, once a refuge, now felt like a cage. The danger wasn't just theoretical anymore, it was closing in. "Stay here," Alex whispered, edging toward the door. He peered through the peephole, muscles taut with readiness. Outside, the dim hallway was deserted. No sign of anyone, yet the threat lingered, tangible and suffocating. Alex exhaled slowly, stepping back. False alarm, for now. Maya nodded, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her calm facade. The conspiracy was tightening its grip, and trust was becoming a luxury they could ill afford. "We need to move faster," Maya urged. "I've found a way to trace the voice manipulations back to their source, but it's risky if they detect us." Alex cut her off. "We don't have a choice. We expose them or we disappear. Their alliance, fragile but vital, had just been forged in the crucible of fear and determination. As Maya returned to her screens and Alex prepared for the battles ahead, the echo of manipulated voices haunted the room, a chilling reminder that in this war, trust was the most dangerous vulnerability of all. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the silent war waged in its shadows where every voice was a weapon, every whisper a threat, and every ally a potential betrayer. The game had changed, and so had Alex Mercer. He was no longer just a man fighting for his name. He was a man fighting to reclaim the very essence of who he was. But in the murky depths of paranoia and deceit, the question remained, could he trust anyone, even the one person who had risked everything to stand by him? The answer would come soon enough, but for now, they had to survive the night. The air in the safe house was thick with the stale scent of cold coffee and burning circuits. Flickering fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Alex Mercer sat hunched in front of a bank of monitors, eyes scanning streams of data with a relentless focus. The room was cramped, littered with cables, hardware components, and the faint echo of distant sirens from the city beyond. He wasn't alone. Across from him sat Jared Cole, his former teammate and longtime colleague from their days in the elite security unit. Jared's expression was unreadable, a mixture of suspicion and reluctance as his gaze flicked between the screens and Alex's tense face. "I don't like this," Jared muttered, voice low and cautious. "You come back after everything, asking for help, and I'm supposed to just jump in." His fingers drummed nervously on the keyboard. Alex nodded, understanding the doubt that hung heavy in the air. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't desperate. They're using our own systems against us, manipulating voices, fabricating evidence. I need you because you know the protocols better than anyone." Jared's eyes narrowed. Protocols don't mean much when someone's rewriting the rules behind your back. I saw what they did to you, framed you with your own voice. It's not just a tech problem anymore. It's war. He leaned closer to the monitor, pulling up a series of encrypted voice logs. Alex recognized the samples immediately altered, tampered, voices stretched and twisted like a distorted melody. There was his own voice, but warped, confessing to crimes he never committed. The cold realization burned deep. How do we fight something that can mimic us so perfectly? Jared's voice cracked with frustration. Alex took a deep breath, the weight of years of training and experience settling over him like armor. "We start by understanding how they got in. We trace the breaches, identify the weak points. If we can isolate their entry, we can stop them." Hours passed as they dug through layers of code and security logs, cross-referencing data and mapping out the extent of the infiltration. The more they uncovered, the more the picture of a sprawling, sophisticated network emerged, a covert operation that reached into the highest levels of government and intelligence. Voice hacking wasn't just a tool. It was a weapon designed to destabilize, to erode trust at its core. Suddenly, the monitors flickered and went dark. The safe house was plunged into silence and shadow. Alex's heart raced. "Power's out," Jared said grimly. "Could be a blackout or someone trying to cut us off." In the darkness, their whispered voices filled the room, a fragile lifeline amid the uncertainty. Plans were exchanged in hushed tones, contingency measures laid out with precision born of years in the field. Every second felt like a countdown, every shadow a potential threat. When the emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie red glow across the room, Jared's posture shifted. He looked at Alex, eyes searching for a sign of vulnerability or deceit. Instead, he found determination. "All right, Jared said finally, his voice steady but cautious. I'm in, but we do this my way, careful, quiet. And if this goes south, we cover each other's tracks. Alex extended a hand, the gesture simple but loaded with significance. Together, they clasped hands, an unspoken pact forged in the darkness. The battle ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and deception, but for the first time in weeks, Alex felt a sliver of hope. They had entered the network's shadowy core. Now they had to survive it. As dawn crept through the grimy windows, the city outside stirred, unaware of the silent war unfolding within its depths. Voices could be weaponized, identities stolen, but here, in the tangled wires and digital shadows, two men prepared to fight back for truth, for justice, for their very selves. Alex glanced at Jared, a flicker of a smile breaking through his exhaustion. Let's find out who pulled the strings. Jared nodded, fingers already flying over the keyboard. One step closer to tearing down their echo chamber. But as the screens came alive with new data, Alex couldn't shake the gnawing question. Was trust truly possible in a world where even the sound of your own voice could betray you? The narrow door creaked as Alex Mercer stepped into the dimly lit workshop. A cramped space cluttered with tangled cables, humming servers, and an array of voice modulation devices strewn across scattered tables. The faint scent of solder and machine oil mingled with the stale air, punctuating the room's mechanical pulse. Lena Ortiz looked up from a screen filled with complex waveforms, her sharp, dark eyes meeting his with a mixture of caution and recognition. You're late, she said, her voice steady but tinged with a hint of urgency. Time isn't exactly on our side, is it? Alex gave a wry smile, rubbing the stubble on his chin. Could say the same for you. She gestured toward a cluttered workstation, where a setup of microphones and speakers awaited. I've been running simulations all night. You wanted to understand what you're really up against. He nodded, stepping closer. I need to know how they're using my voice. What makes it so convincing? Lena tapped a few keys, and the screen flickered to life, displaying a spectrogram of a voice recording. This is a recording of you, she said, but it's layered, complex. What you hear as a single voice is actually multiple synthetic tracks combined to mimic every inflection, hesitation, even breath pattern. Alex leaned in, eyebrows knitting together. Suddenly, the speakers crackled, and his voice echoed through the room, crisp, clear, yet saying words he didn't recognize. I authorized the transfer of classified data to unauthorized entities. His stomach clenched. That's not me. No, Lena agreed, eyes flicking to the data scrolling on the monitors. It's a forgery, but a damn near perfect one. They can splice your voice, alter emotional tone, even fabricate entire conversations. It's sophisticated enough to fool the best voice recognition systems and anyone hearing it without forensic analysis. The room seemed to shrink around him as the weight of that realization sank in. So, the recordings used to frame me. Exactly. Lena pulled up a series of digital fingerprints, cryptic traces left behind in the code by Evelyn Cross's hackers. See these anomalies? They're subtle. A slight timing shift here, an artificial noise pattern there. Only someone with deep knowledge of voice tech would know what to look for. Alex's fingers drummed on the table. You think we can trace them? She nodded. Maybe. But Evelyn's network is layered, decentralized. They cover their tracks well. Still, every system leaves a footprint. We just have to find the right ones. They spent hours poring over data logs, Lena explaining the nuances of voice synthesis. The way artificial intelligence could clone voices down to emotional timbre, and how such technology could be weaponized for manipulation and control. Alex absorbed the information, each revelation a double-edged sword, empowering yet terrifying. "I always thought voice was the most personal thing," Alex murmured during a brief pause. "Now it feels like the most dangerous." Lena gave a tight smile. "In this world, trust is a fragile commodity. Your voice can be your greatest weapon or your undoing." As the night deepened, Lena handed Alex a secure drive containing encrypted tools and data crucial for detecting voice manipulations. "This could give you an edge," she said. "But be careful. Once you start poking at the nest, it won't sit quietly." Alex pocketed the drive, a cold resolve settling over him. "I'm not done yet." Outside, the distant wail of sirens echoed faintly, mingling with the hum of the city's restless night. It was a reminder the game had only just begun, and the stakes had never been higher. The glow from the monitors cast long shadows across the cramped room, the hum of servers and the occasional beep punctuating the silence. Alex sat rigid in his chair, eyes fixed on the chaotic patterns of data streaming before him. Beside him, Maya's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling threads of code and voice samples from the tangled web of digital footprints left behind by the conspiracy. The air was thick with tension, the scent of stale coffee mingling with the metallic tang of electronics. "Look at this," Maya murmured, zooming in on an audio waveform that at first glance seemed corrupted beyond recognition. But beneath the static, a faint, insidious message emerged, buried beneath layers of manipulation. Her voice was low but urgent, her eyes reflecting the flickering screen. "They're using deep layering techniques to mask propaganda within innocuous voice samples. It's designed to destabilize public perception, to erode trust in the government by sowing doubt with voices people think they know." Alex leaned in closer, the weight of her words settling in his chest like a stone. He recognized the tone instantly. The cold, calculated cadence was a signature of Evelyn Cross's network. "So it's not just me," he said grimly. "This goes far beyond framing one man." "Far," Maya agreed. "This is a coordinated assault on information itself. They're weaponizing voice, turning it into a tool of chaos." Their investigation took on a fevered pace as they traced digital breadcrumbs across encrypted servers and shadowy forums. Each discovery deepened the complexity of the web they sought to unravel. Voice samples twisted and reassembled. Messages crafted to mimic trusted figures, but twisted to spread fear and confusion. Alex replayed one particularly chilling clip. His own voice, distorted but unmistakably his, broadcasting inflammatory statements designed to ignite unrest. The violation was visceral, each word a dagger aimed at his very identity. He swallowed hard, the paranoia that had been simmering now boiling over. "They're everywhere," he whispered, "using me like a ghost to haunt the system." Maya's eyes met his, steady and determined. "We can fight this. We have to. But it means going deeper into their network, risking exposure." The risk was clear. Evelyn Cross wasn't just a distant shadow. She was a puppeteer pulling strings from the darkness, backed by a covert network of hackers and disinformation agents. Their ideological mission was as dangerous as it was precise: to destabilize the government and rewrite the narrative through the manipulation of voice and truth. Hours blurred into the early morning as they pieced together fragments of code and distorted audio. The room grew colder, the outside world slipping away until only the glow of the screens and the echo of manipulated voices remained. Every revelation chipped away at Alex's sense of reality, the lines between ally and enemy, truth and deception, blurring into an indistinguishable haze. Yet amid the chaos, a grim resolve took root. They had found the thread that could unravel the conspiracy. The network was vast, but not impenetrable. And in that knowledge lay the first glimmer of hope. As dawn crept through the blinds, Alex and Maya exchanged a look heavy with unspoken understanding. The battle ahead would test everything they had, their skills, their trust, their very identities. But they would face it together. For if voices could be twisted to destroy, then voices could also be wielded to fight back. And so, with the first light of day casting new shadows across the walls, they prepared to step deeper into the web of deceit, knowing that every sound, every whisper, could be their undoing or their salvation. The room fell silent once more, but the echo of their discovery reverberated in the air, a haunting reminder that in this new world, the truth was never simply spoken, it was fought for, one voice at a time. The sterile white walls of the government interrogation room seemed to close in on me, the faint hum of the overhead fluorescent lights drilling into my skull. I sat rigidly on the metal chair, hands clenched tightly on my lap, trying to steady the storm of thoughts swirling in my mind. Every so often, the faintest echo of my own voice, warped, manipulated, crept into my consciousness. A phantom reminder of the weapon turned against me. The mirror-like glass reflected my tired, unshaven face back at me, fractured and distorted by the flickering light. The door opened with a soft click, and Agent Simmons entered with an unhurried, measured step. He was the embodiment of controlled authority, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that matched the cold precision of his gaze. His eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto mine with a calm that felt more like a calculated assessment than a gesture of concern. "Alex," he began, his voice smooth and even, "you need to understand the gravity of the situation you're in." I swallowed hard, trying to read between his words, searching for some shred of honesty or alliance. But Simmons was a master of subtlety. Each sentence carefully crafted to convey cooperation while masking a deeper threat. "There are forces at play here beyond your comprehension," he continued. "Your case is drawing unwanted attention, and certain interests are pushing to contain the fallout." I narrowed my eyes. "So that's it. I'm a liability now." He inclined his head slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Not a liability, Alex. A variable we must control." The implication was clear. The agency I once trusted was turning its back on me. The betrayal stung sharper than any physical blow. Later that evening, the city was a blur of neon lights and distant sirens, but none of it penetrated the tight bubble of anxiety I carried. I met Maya just outside the agency's imposing glass facade. Her face was etched with worry, eyes darting around as if expecting shadows to leap from the walls. "They're tightening the noose," she whispered urgently. "Simmons isn't just a messenger, he's part of the problem. Political pressure is mounting. They want this wrapped up fast, and they don't care who gets crushed in the process." Her words confirmed my worst fears. The lines between friend and foe were blurring, and every ally risked becoming an enemy. Yet Maya's loyalty was a fragile beacon in the growing darkness, her pragmatic support grounding me when I teetered on the edge. Back in the solitude of my apartment, I replayed the surveillance footage Maya had procured. The grainy images flickered on the screen, revealing faces I once trusted moving in calculated patterns. Each frame was a puzzle piece to a larger conspiracy, but the picture it formed was one of isolation. The voices I heard, the ones I once believed were mine, were now tools wielded by unseen hands. I leaned back, the weight of betrayal pressing down hard. The agency I served had become a labyrinth of suspicion and deceit. If I was to survive, I had to cross lines I never thought I'd approach, operating outside the official channels, trusting only those who had proven their loyalty through fire. My reflection in the darkened window was no longer just mine. It was the echo of a man fighting to reclaim his identity in a world where voices could kill and trust was the rarest commodity of all. The night pressed against the windows like a silent, suffocating weight. Alex Mercer sat slumped in the corner of his sparse apartment, the glow of the monitor casting a sickly blue light across his face. His eyes, sharp once and unshakable, now flickered with doubt and exhaustion. The playback hissed softly through the speakers, his voice, but not quite. The words tumbled out in warped cadence, syllables stretched and twisted, turning his own declarations into sinister accusations, veiled threats, and cold betrayals. He pressed pause and leaned forward, fingers trembling as they hovered over the keyboard. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass, the distant drone of hovercars blinking by like fireflies in the dark. His breath came shallow and sharp, heart hammering against his ribs like a desperate prisoner. "It's not me," he whispered to the empty room, voice cracking. "It can't be me." But the echo of his distorted voice refused to lie down. It lingered in the shadows, mocking him, a ghostly specter that gnawed at his resolve. The technology meant to secure identities had turned against him, weaponized by unseen hands to dismantle who he was, or at least who he believed himself to be. The doorbell startled him, a shrill intrusion that shattered the fragile silence. He jumped, casting a wary glance toward the entrance. It was Maya. She slipped inside, her presence steady and reassuring, though Alex barely registered it at first. Her eyes searched his face, reading the distress etched into every line. "Alex," she said softly, closing the door behind her. "You need to rest. You're wearing yourself down." He shook his head, voice hoarse. "I can't. Not while they're out there, twisting everything I say, everything I remember." Maya pulled out a chair, sitting across from him. "I've found anomalies in the recordings, edits, overlays. Someone's been playing with your voice at a level far beyond simple mimicry. It's a sophisticated operation." Alex rubbed his temple. "I don't know what's real anymore, Maya. Sometimes I hear my voice say things I never said. When I try to remember, the memories shift, like sand slipping through my fingers." Her gaze softened but remained firm. "You have to trust yourself. We'll get through this, together." But even as the words offered a fragile hope, Alex's mind recoiled inward, spiraling into doubt. That night, back in the solitude of his apartment, the world seemed to tilt beneath his feet. The smart speaker, a device he'd once relied on without hesitation, suddenly betrayed him. A voice whispered from its depths, first his own, then slipping into a chilling imitation of Evelyn Cross. "You're losing control," it hissed, the room growing colder with every syllable. Alex's heart seized. He lunged forward, smashing the device to the floor, shards scattering like broken promises. But the fear lingered, wrapped tight around his chest. Days bled into nights as he wandered the city's neon-lit streets, a ghost among the crowds. Every passerby's voice seemed a potential lie, every greeting a calculated trap. He avoided calls, silenced messages, and retreated into a fortress of silence. In a dim cafe, Detective Reinhold observed him from a shadowed booth. The detective's furrowed brow and weary eyes betrayed a man caught between suspicion and reluctant sympathy. "Alex," Holt said quietly when he finally approached, voice low enough not to draw attention. "You're slipping. The paranoia is swallowing you whole. You have to hold on to something real." Alex met his gaze, hollow and haunted. What's real anymore, detective? When my own voice turns against me. Holt sighed, the weight of years in his voice. You fight with the truth, but sometimes the truth fights back harder. Don't lose yourself to the noise. The words hung heavy as Alex left the cafe, the city's pulse thrumming beneath his feet. Somewhere in the labyrinth of sound and deceit, he had to find the anchor that would keep him tethered to reality before the echoes consumed him entirely. His reflection in a rain-streaked window blurred and fractured, a mosaic of doubt and determination. The journey ahead was uncertain, the battlefield not just external but inside his own mind. And in this distorted reality, the line between hunter and hunted, truth and illusion, friend and foe, was perilously thin. But despite the shadows clawing at his sanity, Alex Mercer knew one truth remained unshaken. He would fight to reclaim his voice, his identity, and his life, even if every whisper threatened to undo him. The night deepened, swallowing the city's light. And somewhere, just beyond the veil of sound, the echo chamber waited. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and cleaner long past its prime. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a pallid glow on the peeling paint and the single metal table that separated Alex Mercer from Detective Ryan Holt. Alex sat rigid, hands cuffed loosely in front of him, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion etched into his face. Across from him, Holt's furrowed brow and tired gaze betrayed a man weighed down by more than just this case. You understand the gravity of the situation, Holt said quietly, voice low enough to be almost confidential. Your voice recordings don't lie. The evidence is stacked against you. He paused, searching Alex's face. But I don't believe it. Not entirely. Alex's eyes narrowed, suspicion prickling at his skin. Then why are you here? To play judge and jury? To break me down until I confess to a crime I didn't commit? Holt shook his head slowly, the lines on his face deepening. I'm here because I'm stuck between what I'm told and what I see. This case, it's not clean. There are things off the record, whispers of pressure from above to close it fast. But something about this doesn't sit right with me. A silence settled between them, tense and uncertain. Alex's mind raced, trying to parse Holt's intentions. Was this an act of genuine doubt or a calculated move to maintain control? What do you want from me? Alex finally asked, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Holt leaned in, lowering his voice further. I want to help, but we have to be careful. If my superiors find out, it'll be the end of my career. And you, well, you're a marked man. The weight of Holt's admission hung heavy in the air. Alex knew the stakes. Trust was a scarce commodity, and now he was being offered an ally in perhaps the most unlikely of places. Later that night, under a curtain of rain that muffled the city's usual cacophony, Alex met Holt in a shadowed alley behind a nondescript diner. The street lamps cast pools of orange light on the wet pavement, reflecting distorted images of the two men locked in this secret exchange. Holt pressed a small USB drive into Alex's palm. This has data I managed to pull from internal channels. Might help you connect some dots, or at least buy you time. Alex nodded, the cool metal against his skin grounding him amid the chaos. Thank you, he whispered, but this puts you at risk. I'm already on thin ice, Holt replied, voice grim but resolute. If we're going to get to the bottom of this, we have to work together. Back in her cramped workshop, Maya Lin sat hunched over her glowing monitors, fingers flying across the keyboard as streams of encrypted data scrolled past. The air was thick with the hum of machines and the faint scent of solder and old electronics. Her eyes, sharp and observant, caught patterns invisible to most, peeling back layers of digital disguise. "This isn't just a hack," she muttered, voice tense with concentration. "It's a full-scale operation. Evelyn Cross isn't just playing with voices, she's rewriting reality." Alex watched over her shoulder, the weight of his fractured identity pressing down harder than ever. Every manipulated recording, every false whisper had chipped away at his sense of self. Now, with Holt's covert support and Maya's technical prowess, a fragile thread of hope began to weave through the paranoia. But the stakes were climbing. Holt's phone buzzed insistently in his coat pocket. He stepped aside, voice low and conflicted as he answered, "Yes, I'm handling it, sir. No, I haven't made any mistakes." His gaze flickered back to the alley where Alex had just disappeared into the night. The conflict warring inside him was clear: duty to his badge, loyalty to the truth, and the looming threat of betrayal from those sworn to protect the system. As the call ended, Holt exhaled sharply, the lines of fatigue deepening. In this world of shadows and sound, alliances were fragile and trust was a weapon as deadly as any voice forged in deception. The uneasy partnership between Alex and Holt had begun, a fragile beacon in the suffocating fog of lies. But with every step forward, the echo chamber around them grew louder, threatening to consume them both. And the question lingered, like a whispered threat in the dark: who could truly be trusted when every voice could be faked, every word manipulated, and every ally could turn enemy? The night deepened, carrying with it the weight of secrets yet to be uncovered and the fragile hope that the truth might still be heard above the chaos. The sterile glow of the archive room's overhead lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows across the stacks of classified files that lined the shelves. Alex Mercer sat hunched, his intense eyes scanning through the digital documents on his tablet. The air smelled faintly of aged paper and cold metal, a stark contrast to the heated turmoil churning inside his mind. Every fragment of Evelyn Cross's past he uncovered felt like peeling back layers of a dark wound that refused to heal. His fingers trembled slightly as he tapped open a heavily encrypted dossier labeled with a date from 5 years prior. The document chronicled Evelyn's tenure as a respected government intelligence officer, one of the agency's brightest minds in voice recognition and security. But as Alex delved deeper, the narrative shifted. There were redacted sections, cryptic notes, and whispers of disillusionment that had festered beneath her poised exterior. He leaned back, rubbing his unshaven jaw, the weight of Evelyn's transformation settling heavily on his shoulders. How had a woman so dedicated to order and justice become the architect of chaos? The answer seemed buried in the ideological fractures that had driven her to betray everything she once stood for. Suddenly, the quiet hum of the servers was joined by the soft chime of a message notification. It was from Maya Lin. He opened the encrypted channel, her face flickering onto the screen, eyes sharp and determined despite the fatigue etched around them. "Alex, I've decrypted a batch of her communications," Maya said, her voice low but urgent. "There's more here than just operational chatter. Personal reflections, doubts, even anger aimed at the system she served." They convened in the cramped tech lab, walls lined with monitors that glowed with streams of code and intercepted transmissions. Maya's fingers danced across her keyboard, unraveling the threads of Evelyn's covert network. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Every breakthrough brought them closer to understanding the enemy, but deeper into a labyrinth of deception. A sudden, sharp intake of breath from Maya broke the silence. "Here," she whispered, pointing at a message dated shortly before Evelyn went rogue. "She mentions the betrayal of ideals and the corruption beneath the surface. This isn't just power or greed. This is personal. Alex absorbed the words, a mixture of sympathy and revulsion stirring inside him. He thought back to the grainy footage he had found earlier, covertly recorded video of Evelyn at a government briefing, her composed and elegant demeanor barely masking the simmering discontent beneath. The image flickered on the screen, a haunting echo of the woman she once was. She was one of us, Alex muttered. One of the good ones. Maya nodded grimly, until she wasn't. Determined to piece together the human story behind the mastermind, Alex arranged a clandestine meeting with an old contact who had once worked alongside Evelyn. They met under the flickering neon lights of a rundown cafe, the murmur of the city outside weaving a soundtrack of uncertainty and unrest. The contact's eyes darted nervously as he spoke in hushed tones. Evelyn believed the system was broken from the inside. She tried to fix it, but the rot was too deep. They cast her out. That's when she turned. Alex's mind churned with the implications. Evelyn's betrayal was not born from simple malice, but from a fractured idealism warped by disillusionment. Her campaign of voice manipulation and sabotage was a desperate attempt to expose and dismantle the very system that had rejected her. As he left the cafe, the cold night air bit at his skin, and the distant sounds of the city pulsed like a heartbeat. The fragile line between trust and deception had never felt more perilous. Back in his safe house, Alex replayed the recordings and messages again, each echo of Evelyn's voice a chilling reminder of the enemy he faced. Her calculated calm, her ruthless precision, born from a deeply personal crusade that threatened not only his survival, but the fragile fabric of society itself. The revelations changed everything. Understanding Evelyn's past gave Alex new insight into her strategies and vulnerabilities. But it also deepened the shadows of paranoia that clouded his mind. If someone like Evelyn could fall so far, how could he be certain who else had been compromised? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert on his comm device. Another breach attempt. Evelyn was closing in. The past was not just a story to be uncovered. It was a weapon. And Alex knew that to survive the coming storm, he would have to confront the echoes of the past head-on. The line between hunter and hunted blurred as he steeled himself for what lay ahead. He whispered to the darkness, "I'll find the truth, no matter the cost." But deep inside, he wondered if the truth was something he really wanted to hear. And with that lingering doubt, the chapter closed, setting the stage for the inevitable clash between two voices locked in a deadly game of identity and deception. The room was quieter than usual, the kind of silence that felt thick and heavy, pressing against Alex Mercer's ears like a warning. He sat on the edge of the battered couch in the safe house, the faded light bulb above casting a weak halo that barely cut through the shadows. His phone buzzed on the table, an insistent pulse that made his skin crawl. He reached for it cautiously, fingers trembling. And when he unlocked the screen, the voice that greeted him wasn't his own, or rather, it was but twisted, warped, a sinister echo that spat commands instead of greetings. Lock all exits. Disable all external communications. The voice ordered, cold and mechanical, yet unmistakably his. Alex's heart slammed against his ribs as he realized the nightmare had arrived in full force. His own voice, weaponized against him, flooding the room with threats disguised as orders. He rose, every muscle taut, eyes darting to the windows and doors. As if on cue, the locks clicked and slid shut, the security systems powering down one by one. The safe house transformed from sanctuary to prison in moments. Alex's breath hitched. The betrayal was visceral, intimate. The voice that had comforted him now, a ghostly jailer. Outside, the city's usual hum was absent, replaced by an eerie stillness, punctuated by distant sirens and the faint drone of surveillance units overhead. He grabbed his jacket, phone still alive with the corrupted commands, and moved to the window. The street below was empty, shadows stretching like fingers in the dim light. A sudden knock at the door made him freeze. The voice-hacked commands repeated inside his mind, a maddening chorus blurring reality and deception. He reached for the small pistol concealed beneath his jacket, heart pounding in his ears. "Alex, it's me," came Maya's voice, firm yet laced with concern through the encrypted comlink. He exhaled sharply, the tension easing just slightly. "Maya, they've got my voice. They're using it against me." "I'm tracing the source now," she replied, fingers flying over her keyboard in the cramped tech den she'd set up for him. "This is beyond anything I've seen. The manipulation is real-time, adaptive. Evelyn's network is using your voice like a weapon." Alex paced, every step echoing in the hollow room. "We don't have much time. If they can control my voice, they can control everything I say, everything I do." Maya's face appeared on the cracked tablet screen, eyes sharp, brows knitted. "I'm isolating the hack. You need to get out now. I'm sending coordinates to a secondary safe house." He grabbed his gear, the cold weight of his pistol grounding him as he slipped out into the night. The streets were slick with rain, neon reflections shimmering on the pavement. Every sound was amplified, footsteps behind him, a whisper carried by the wind, the distant murmur of a drone overhead. His own voice haunted him, echoing from hidden speakers, issuing false warnings designed to mislead and trap. Alex's fingers clenched around the phone as he communicated with Maya, who guided him through a labyrinth of back alleys and service tunnels. Each turn brought a new threat, automated security doors locking behind him, voice-activated traps triggering alarms, and shadowy figures lurking just beyond the edge of vision. The tension was suffocating. Every breath was a calculated risk, every sound a potential ambush. But the thought of Evelyn Cross, elegant and cold, orchestrating this symphony of terror with her piercing dark eyes and calm demeanor, sharpened his resolve. He finally reached the secondary safe house, a nondescript apartment tucked between towering faceless buildings. Maya was already there, her fingers still dancing across the keyboard, eyes scanning lines of code. "Got it," she said breathlessly. "I managed to isolate the voice hack's core signal. I'm working on a countermeasure, but it's going to take time." Alex nodded, exhaustion gnawing at his edges. "We're not safe yet. Evelyn's playing a dangerous game. If she can twist my voice, she can destroy everything I stand for." Maya's gaze hardened. "Then we end this. We find her, and we stop her." The room pulsed with the weight of their shared determination, the echo of corrupted voices lingering like a shadow neither could shake. Outside, the city breathed on, unaware of the silent war being waged in its shadows. As Alex stared out the rain-streaked window, the distant hum of drones and the whispered remnants of his manipulated voice reminded him the battle for identity was just beginning. Yet beneath the terror and chaos, a spark of defiance burned bright. He would fight, not just to clear his name, but to reclaim the very sound of himself before the enemy silenced him forever. The night deepened, thick with uncertainty and danger. But Alex Mercer was no stranger to shadows, and tonight he would become the voice that refused to be broken. The room was thick with shadows, the only light spilling from a lone desk lamp that barely cut through the gloom. Alex Mercer sat motionless, a pair of worn headphones clamped tightly over his ears. The soft hiss of static filled the silence, before the first voice emerged, his voice, clear yet warped, whispering accusations that clung to the edges of sanity. "You betrayed us," it said, then twisted into a laugh that wasn't his. His jaw clenched, fingers tightening around the chair's arms as the echoes of his own voice stabbed at the fragile walls of his identity. He pulled off the headphones, gasping for breath as if emerging from underwater. The room spun slightly, his vision blurring around the edges. It was becoming impossible to tell where the recordings ended and his own memories began. The stolen voice, once a tool of proof, now felt like a shackle chaining him to a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Maya Lin's knock at the door was hesitant but firm. "Alex, you okay in there?" He opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, eyes sharp but concerned, her presence a tether to reality. "I've got something," she said, holding a small data pad. "New evidence. It might help us cut through the noise." Alex took the device with trembling hands, the weight of hope mingling uneasily with his doubt. "Every time I hear my voice, it's like I'm losing myself a little more." She nodded, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "I know, but we're not done yet. We have to keep fighting." Together, they pored over the data. Maya pointed out subtle inconsistencies, traces of manipulation that went beyond simple hacking layers, of crafted deception designed to fracture not just Alex's reputation, but his very sense of reality. Later that night, Alex found himself wandering the rain-slick streets. The neon signs casting fractured colors onto the wet pavement. Across the street, Detective Ryan Holt leaned against a lamppost, watching with a furrowed brow. His tired eyes betrayed the conflict inside him, duty pulling one way, growing doubts tugging another. "You don't have to do this alone," Holt called out, voice low but earnest. Alex met his gaze, the weight of the past weeks pressing down. "Trust is the hardest thing to find these days," he said. Back in the solitude of his apartment, the cracked mirror on the wall reflected a fragmented image. Alex's sharp features splintered into dozens of shards, each one a distorted version of himself. He whispered into the silence, "Who am I, if not the voice that betrays me?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the night deepened around him. The fractured identity that had once seemed a curse now ignited a fierce determination. He would reclaim his voice, his truth, no matter the cost. The echo chamber of lies might try to drown him, but Alex Mercer was ready to fight back for his name, his sanity, and the fragile humanity at the core of his being. As dawn crept through the blinds, the city stirred awake, unaware that the battle for one man's identity was far from over. And somewhere in the shadows, the voices waited, ready for their next move. The apartment was drowned in the muted glow of holographic screens, their blue and green light reflecting off Maya's focused face. She sat hunched over her setup, fingers darting with precise urgency over a transparent keyboard. The low hum of the servers served as a soundtrack to her relentless search, each line of code a thread in a tangled web she was determined to unravel. For days, she had sifted through mountains of digital noise, falls, trails, dead ends, and encrypted chatter until, finally, a flicker of certainty emerged. "Gotcha," she whispered, barely audible over the mechanical whir. Her eyes scanned the decrypted message again, confirming the unmistakable signature of Evelyn Cross. The secure communication was a smoking gunner, covert directive outlining the voice hacking operations, the framing strategies, and the manipulation of public perception. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. This was the proof they desperately needed. Her fingers trembled slightly as she copied the files onto a data chip, the weight of responsibility settling over her. She knew delivering this evidence to Alex could change everything, but it also meant exposing themselves to heightened danger. Evelyn was ruthless, and this revelation would provoke a fierce response. Across the city, Alex Mercer stood before a rain-speckled window, the neon lights outside blurring into streaks of color. His reflection stared back at him, a fractured image of a man hunted and haunted. The past weeks had been a relentless blur of accusations, betrayals, and a growing sense of isolation. Then Maya's urgent message pinged on his encrypted communicator, pulling him back from the edge. The message was brief but electrifying. Found something. Meet tonight. Urgent. A mix of hope and dread twisted in his gut. Could this be the breakthrough they had been waiting for, or a trap set by Evelyn's network to draw him out? He knew the risks, but also understood that standing still was not an option. With a final glance at the cityscape, he grabbed his coat and headed into the night. They met in a quiet, nondescript cafe nestled between a shuttered bookstore and a late-night diner. The dim lighting and hushed atmosphere provided a rare sanctuary. Maya slid the data chip across the table, her eyes locked onto Alex's with a fierce intensity. "This is it," she said softly, voice edged with exhaustion and determination. "Proof that Evelyn Cross is behind the conspiracy." Alex took the chip, feeling the cold plastic between his fingers as if it were a lifeline. "This changes everything," he murmured. "We can finally hit back." Maya nodded, though her gaze flickered with concern. "But she's going to escalate. This won't go unnoticed. We have to move carefully." Alex's jaw tightened. No more running. Time to fight. Meanwhile, far from their fragile alliance, a shadowed figure observed multiple surveillance feeds in a cramped, dimly lit room. The flicker of monitors cast eerie shadows on the walls. The figure's lips curved into a subtle smirk as a new alert flashed a breach in their digital veil. "They're getting closer," the figure mused, voice cold and steady. "Good, let the game begin." Back in the cafe, as Alex and Maya prepared to depart, the weight of the moment pressed down. The evidence was their beacon and their burden. With it came the promise of justice and the certainty of a deadly confrontation. Alex stepped out into the night, rain beginning to fall again, each drop a reminder that the storm was far from over. The turning point had arrived, but the path ahead was fraught with peril. Every step now was a move in a dangerous game where voices could kill, and trust was the rarest commodity of all. The echo chamber around him wasn't just a trap, it was a battlefield, and Alex Mercer was ready to fight for his voice, his identity, and the truth. The night deepened, the city's pulse quickened, and the relentless echo of his stolen voice haunted the shadows, urging him forward into the uncertain dawn. The chapter continues to unfold with detailed scenes of Alex and Maya preparing their next moves, hacking into secured networks, and narrowly evading surveillance as they piece together Evelyn's plans. Each moment is charged with the tension of imminent discovery and the psychological toll on Alex's fragile trust in himself and others. Through dialogue rich with urgency and introspection, the narrative explores the thin line between hope and despair, forging a path toward the approaching confrontation that will decide the fate of many. The air was dense with the sterile chill of synthetic coolers, a mechanical breath that pulsed faintly beneath the endless hum of servers. Alex Mercer crouched in the shadowed alcove just beyond the entrance to the underground facility, the faint glow of security panels flickering over his lean features. His heart hammered in sync with the electronic beeps that punctuated the silencer, rhythmic reminder of the high stakes he faced. Every step forward was a calculated risk. Here, deep inside Evelyn Cross's covert base, The lines between reality and manipulation blurred into a dangerous echo chamber. He adjusted the earpiece Maya had rigged to filter out the facility's active surveillance, but already the subtle interference was seeping through. His own voice, recorded and twisted countless times, was weaponized against Heyman, insidious presence lurking in the static. The soft click of a sensor near his boot warned him to freeze. Alex's breath steadied. Every sense sharpened. He moved like a ghost, sliding through corridors where cold metal walls reflected the dim, bluish light of emergency strips. The facility was a labyrinth of deception, designed to disorient and trap intruders. His fingers brushed a panel beside a reinforced door, the biometric scanner scanning for authorized voices or retinal patterns. Alex whispered a carefully forged command, his voice synthesized by Maya's algorithm to mimic an insider. The scanner hesitated before granting access. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a maze of server racks and tangled cables humming with encrypted data streams. Here, Evelyn orchestrated her web of lies. The silence shattered suddenly. A dissonant distortion flowed through his earpiece, twisting the sound of his own voice into a cruel, mocking echo. "Who's the prey now, Alex?" The words slithered through the noise, a psychological trap set by Evelyn herself. Alex clenched his jaw, fighting the rising tide of paranoia that threatened to undo him. "Not today," he muttered, pushing deeper. He rounded a corner and found a terminal glowing with an active feed showing multiple voice manipulation nodes, a node in Evelyn's sprawling network. His mind raced, piecing together the scale of the operation. This was no mere act of sabotage. It was a calculated assault on identity itself, weaponizing trust and communication. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind him. Alex spun, drawing a compact pistol, but the figure that emerged was familiar Maya, her eyes sharp and resolute. "You're cutting it close," she whispered, handing him a data drive. "This has the final keys to unravel her encryption. But once you use it, there's no turning back." Together, they moved toward the core control room, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpeting. The door slid open to reveal Evelyn Cross waiting, her posture regal and unyielding. The cold light cast her features in stark relief, piercing dark eyes that seemed to bore into Alex's soul. "Welcome, Alex." Evelyn's voice was smooth, almost melodic, yet laced with steel. "I've been expecting you." Alex steadied himself, voice firm despite the whirlwind inside. "This ends now, Evelyn. Your lies, your manipulation. It's over." A chilling smile curved her lips. "You misunderstand. This is only the beginning. The world will hear what I choose to make them hear. And you are the perfect example of what happens when identity is weaponized." The confrontation escalated into a battle of words and technology. Evelyn unleashed a barrage of voice distortions, attempting to drown Alex's commands and disrupt the encrypted drive's upload. The room pulsed with the tension of digital warfare, every second a fight for control. Alex's training and raw determination surged. He countered with precision, hacking through layers of corrupted code while fending off the psychological onslaught. His voice, his true voice, became a beacon cutting through the fog of deception. The data drive transmitted its payload, unraveling Evelyn's network node by node. As the system crashed around them, Evelyn's composure faltered for the first time. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed. "The damage is done. The world is already lost in echoes." But Alex saw past the venom. "Not if we stop listening to the lies. Not if we reclaim the truth." The facility's alarms blared, the building's defenses collapsing as security lockdown protocols disengaged. Maya's voice crackled urgently in his earpiece. "Extraction point is compromised. You need to move." Alex took one last look at Evelyn, her icy calm replaced by a flicker of desperation, and turned toward the exit. The battle was won, but the war over voices and identity was far from over. As he slipped into the shadows beyond the base, the echo of his own voice rang in his ears, reminder that in this world, every sound could be a weapon, and every truth a fragile whisper. The next steps would demand more than skill and courage. They would require reclaiming the very essence of who he was. And in that uncertain future, Alex Mercer was ready to fight. The stale, recycled air of the underground facility pressed against Alex's lungs as he stepped cautiously into the dim control room. Screens lined the walls, each alive with shifting streams of data and flickering voice waveforms, a digital symphony of manipulation and deceit. The low hum of servers filled the space, a constant reminder of the machinery fueling Evelyn Cross's insidious operation. His every step was measured, every breath calculated. This was the heart of the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed him. Alex's eyes flicked across the monitors, recognizing familiar patterns of voice, encryption, and distortion. This was no ordinary hacking. It was an orchestration of lies, weaponized sound waves designed to fracture trust and shatter identity. And for the first time in weeks, the hunter had become the hunted. But he was ready. He had to be. As he moved deeper into the labyrinth of technology, a sudden crackling burst erupted from the speakers. His own voice echoed back at him, twisted into sinister accusations and mocking laughter that bounced off the cold concrete walls. The sound carried a venomous familiarity, each syllable a cruel reminder of the identity stolen and weaponized against him. The room seemed to close in, the line between reality and manipulation blurring dangerously. "You think you can stop this?" A voice hissed from the shadows, cold and measured. Alex spun, heart hammering. Evelyn Cross stepped forward, her elegant form bathed in the pale glow of the monitors. Her dark eyes pierced him with an icy calm, unyielding and sharp as broken glass. "You've underestimated the power of sound, Alex," she said, voice smooth and controlled. "Voices are more than communication, they're control, influence, chaos, and I'm the maestro." Alex's jaw tightened. "You've twisted everything I believed in. This ends now." The two circled in the shadows, a duel not only of bodies, but of ideologies. Evelyn's fingers danced over a sleek console, unleashing a barrage of voice manipulations, fragments of Alex's recorded past, distorted and weaponized to sow doubt and fear. The air vibrated with overlapping echoes. His laughter turned sinister, his promises warped into threats. Each assault was a calculated strike, designed to fracture his resolve. But Alex was no novice. Drawing on years of experience, he countered with a device hastily assembled from scavenged tech, a frequency emitter tuned to disrupt the vocal manipulations. He pressed the trigger, and a piercing static filled the room, shattering the digital illusions and silencing Evelyn's electronic symphony. For a moment, the world held its breath. Evelyn's expression flickered a rare crack in her composed facade. "You may have won this battle," she whispered, "but the war for truth is far from over." Alex didn't respond. He knew she was right. The fragility of identity, the weaponization of voice, this was a new battlefield, one that extended beyond the confines of this underground lair. As sirens blared in the distance and security forces closed in, he slipped away into the shadows, carrying the heavy weight of victory and the haunting echo of a battle that had changed him forever. The fight for truth was just beginning. The confrontation with Evelyn was not merely a physical clash, but an intricate battle of minds and technologies. Each voice distortion was a carefully crafted psychological weapon designed to undermine the very core of Alex's identity. Yet, amidst the chaos, his determination never wavered. The cold precision of Evelyn's voice hacking was met with his analytical mind and raw endurance. The sterile hum of the surveillance equipment became the backdrop to a tense game of cat and mouse. Alex sensed every shift in the room, every flicker of a monitor, every subtle change in the soundscape. Evelyn's calm demeanor was a mask hiding a storm of calculated moves, but Alex's intimate knowledge of security systems gave him the edge. As Evelyn unleashed wave after wave of manipulated voices, Alex found clarity in the storm. The distorted echoes of his own voice, once a source of terror, became cues, patterns he could anticipate and counter. His makeshift device, a testament to his ingenuity, emitted a counter-frequency that fractured the digital web Evelyn had spun so meticulously. The final moments of their battle were a crescendo of tension. Evelyn's piercing gaze locked with his, both aware that the outcome would ripple far beyond the walls of this hidden chamber. When the static crackled and her network faltered, the chill in her eyes deepened, a silent promise of future conflicts. For Alex, the victory was bittersweet. He had dismantled the immediate threat, but knew the war for control over voices, over truth, was ongoing. The echoes of this confrontation would linger, shaping the fragile boundaries of his identity and the uncertain future of a world where sound was both shield and sword. As he disappeared into the night, the hum of servers fading behind him, Alex carried the heavy truth. In this new age, the battle for self was fought in whispers and echoes, and the line between ally and enemy was as fragile as a single, stolen voice. The air in the underground broadcast room was thick with tension, a subtle vibration humming through the walls from the servers that lined the space like silent sentinels. Alex Mercer sat rigid before the console, the glow of multiple monitors casting sharp shadows across his weary face, fingers trembling ever so slightly. He navigated through layers of encrypted files and voice data, assembling the final piece of evidence that would unravel the conspiracy that had tethered his very identity to a web of lies. Outside, the city's relentless pulse carried on unaware, yet on the verge of an awakening. "This is it," Maya Lin's voice crackled softly through the earpiece, steady but laced with the gravity of the moment. "Once you go live, there's no turning back." Alex exhaled slowly, glancing briefly at the live feed window. The timer blinked down the last seconds before the broadcast would pierce the digital veil, reaching millions who had been fed a carefully crafted narrative that Alex Mercer, their once trusted security agent, was a traitor wielding his own voice as a weapon against the state. His own voice, twisted and weaponized by Evelyn Cross and her network, had become a ghost that haunted him relentlessly. But now, the truth would reverberate louder than any manipulated whisper. With a final keystroke, the screen flickered and the broadcast went live. Alex's calm, unyielding voice filled the airwaves, cutting through the noise of misinformation. "I am Alex Mercer. For months, my identity has been stolen, distorted, and weaponized by those who seek to destabilize our government and our society. Today, I will show you the truth." The broadcast switched seamlessly between raw voice recordings, uttered, and authentic, and the manipulated fabrications crafted by Evelyn's network. Visuals of data logs, timestamps, and intercepted communications poured across the screen, each byte dismantling the false narrative piece by piece. In the gleaming tower high above the city, Evelyn Cross watched the live feed with a calm that belied the storm raging inside her. Her piercing dark eyes narrowed as the carefully constructed facade she had built over years began to crumble in real time. The cold elegance of her surroundings, glass walls reflecting. The city's neon glow contrasted starkly with the fury simmering just beneath the surface. She pressed a slender finger against the sleek table, the sound sharp in the silence. "No," she whispered, voice low and deadly. "Not now." But the damage was done. The broadcast ignited a spark among the public, a visceral shock that rippled through crowded streets and quiet homes alike. In a cramped safe house, Maya Lin watched the unfolding revelation with a mixture of relief and cautious hope. The glow of the flickering screen illuminated her determined features as she exchanged a meaningful glance with Detective Ryan Holt, their silent nod signaling a fragile alliance forged in the fires of betrayal and suspicion. "We did it," Maya murmured, though the weight of what came next settled heavily in the room. Outside, in the throbbing heart of the city, a crowd gathered in a public square, their voices rising in disbelief and anger. Neon lights flickered overhead as the chilling reality of voice hacking's reach was laid bare. Trust fractured like glass, sharp edges cutting into the foundations of a society that had placed its faith in technology's promise of security. The consequences of Alex's revelation rippled swiftly. Government agencies scrambled to contain the fallout, their own vulnerability exposed to the world. Agent Simmons appeared on emergency briefings, his inscrutable expression betraying little as he attempted to steer the narrative toward damage control. Yet beneath the polish, cracks formed, political pressure mounting, loyalties questioned. Alex knew this was only the beginning. The conspiracy was unmasked, but the war over identity, trust, and truth was far from over. His own reflection in the monitor seemed a stranger haunted, yet defiant. The echoes of stolen voices still whispered at the edges of his consciousness. A reminder that in this new era, even the sound of your own name could be a battleground. He leaned back, eyes scanning the scrolling data and incoming messages. Somewhere out there, Evelyn Cross was plotting her next move. But tonight, Alex Mercer had reclaimed his voice not just for himself, but for a world that desperately needed to hear the truth. "We're not done," he said quietly into the silence. The words a promise and a warning. The screen faded to black, but the reverberations of that broadcast would echo far beyond this room, shaking the foundations of a society built on sound and deception. And Alex Mercer, once framed and silenced, had become the voice that could no longer be ignored. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, a sea of faces blurred by the glare of cameras and the relentless flash of photographers. Alex Mercer stood at the center, the weight of months of accusations and betrayals pressing against his lean frame. The echo of his own voice, twisted and maliciously manipulated, still haunted him, but today that voice would speak the truth. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex began, his voice steady despite the churn of emotions inside him. "The evidence presented here dismantles the conspiracy that sought to destroy not only my reputation, but the very fabric of trust in our security systems." His eyes scanned the room, seeking some sign of acknowledgement, some ember of belief amid the sea of skepticism. The prosecutor's office had long since crumbled under the weight of forensic proof. Tampered voice recordings revealed as sophisticated fabrications, digital footprints traced back to Evelyn Cross's covert network, and the complicity of shadowy operatives within the agency. Public opinion shifted palpably. The narrative, once painted in black, now bore shades of grey. Outside the courtroom, reporters clamored for statements, their voices a cacophony of curiosity and judgment. Alex answered with caution, aware that every word could be dissected and weaponized anew. His victory was as fragile as the trust he sought to rebuild. In the days following, Maya Lin became a constant presence, her expertise invaluable as they worked to patch breaches in the security systems and expose remaining vulnerabilities. In the dim light of her cluttered workspace, she decrypted the last of the corrupted files. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. The realization sinking in the scope of manipulation was deeper, more pervasive than either of them had imagined. "They didn't just want to frame you," she said quietly. "They wanted to rewrite reality itself." Alex nodded slowly, the weight of that knowledge settling over him like a suffocating fog. Every conversation, every memory, every sound could have been a lie. The boundaries between truth and deception had blurred beyond recognition. Detective Reinhold approached cautiously, the lines of fatigue etched into his rugged face deepening. In a secluded cafe away from prying eyes, they shared a rare moment unburdened by suspicion. "You did what you had to," Holt said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "But this whole thing, it's bigger than us. Corruption, manipulation, fear. It's a virus." Alex looked out the rain-speckled window, the cityscape distorted by the storm. "And I'm supposed to live with the scars." The doubt, Holt's gaze was steady. "We all carry scars. The question is what we do with them." Back in his apartment, Alex sat alone, the silence punctuated only by the faint hum of the city beyond the window. His eyes fixed on a small voice recorder resting on the table, once a tool of his trade, now a symbol of his ordeal. He pressed play, listening to a fragment of his own voice, unaltered, untainted. It was a small victory, but it reminded him of the fragility of identity in a world where sound could be stolen, twisted, weaponized. The path ahead was uncertain, the future a shadowed expanse where trust was a scarce commodity. Yet beneath the weight of betrayal and loss, a flicker of resolve endured. Alex Mercer would not vanish into the echo chamber that had sought to consume him. He would fight to reclaim his voice, piece by fractured piece, and find a new reality amid the ruins of the old. The story was far from over. Outside, the city pulsed with life, oblivious to the silent war waged in the shadows. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Evelyn Cross's influence still lingered, a reminder that the echoes of deception would not be silenced so easily. For Alex, the true battle had only just begun, a battle not just for his name, but for the soul of a world where every whisper could change the course of fate. The air inside Maya's apartment was thick with the hum of servers and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Alex sat across from her, the glow from the monitors painting sharp angles on his face, shadows deepening the lines of exhaustion and weariness. Between them, the clutter of cables and open laptops created a fortress of technology, a fragile sanctuary against the chaotic world beyond. "You sure we're not walking into another trap?" Alex asked, voice low, eyes flicking to the encrypted data scrolling on the main screen. Maya sighed, pushing a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "I've triple-checked every node, every signal. No signs of interception. For now, this is safe. But you're right to be cautious. After everything, trust is a luxury we can't afford." He nodded slowly, the weight of his recent betrayals pressing down on him. Paranoia was a gnawing companion now, lurking in every whisper of static or unexpected silence. Yet, here with Maya, he felt a fragile thread of hope. Their dialogue was interrupted by the soft chime of a secure message. Maya glanced quickly, then frowned. "It's Holt. He wants to meet. Said it's urgent." The name stirred a complex mixture of relief and apprehension within Alex. Holt's allegiance had always been ambiguous, a lawman, torn between duty and the murky pressures of political power. But in the silence after the conspiracy was unveiled, the detective had surprised Alex with a tentative offer of collaboration. Later, at a quiet cafe, the rain tapped steadily against the windows, a soothing counterpoint to the tension thickening the air between them. Holt sat across from Alex, his rugged features shadowed by the dim light, eyes tired but resolute. "I've been digging," Holt began carefully, "and there's more corruption buried deeper than we thought. Some of it's inside the agency. You're not out of the woods yet." Alex leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "So why help me? Why risk it?" Holt's gaze hardened. "Because I owe you the truth, and maybe a shot at redemption for myself. But this isn't just about you anymore. It's about what's left of our system." The fragile alliance forged in the shadows was a tentative bridge over a chasm of suspicion. Yet, it was a bridge Alex had no choice but to cross. Alone later that night, Alex found himself on the rooftop of his temporary refuge. The city stretched out beneath him, a kaleidoscope of neon lights and distant sirens. The cold air bit through his thin jacket as he stared at the reflection in the glass pane beside him. It fractured, splitting his face into shards. Mirroring the fractured self he struggled to reclaim. Was he still the man he thought he was? Or had the echo chamber of lies and manipulation altered him beyond recognition? His thoughts were shattered by the sharp beep of Maya's encrypted comm device. A sudden alert. Voices, distorted and hurried, crackled through the speaker and emerging threat. A new move in the relentless game of cat and mouse. Within minutes, Alex, Maya, and Jared Cole were huddled in the cramped safe house, faces taut with urgency. Jared, once a skeptical teammate, now stood shoulder to shoulder with them, the stakes higher than ever. "We've got incoming," Maya said grimly, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Someone's trying to breach our network." Alex's grip tightened on the edge of the table. The shadows of trust were still fragile, but the fight was far from over. This was only another echo in the chamber, another voice trying to drown out the truth. As the lights flickered and the encrypted screens flashed warnings, Alex's mind sharpened, his paranoia a double-edged sword, both a curse and a weapon. The battle for identity, trust, and survival had not ended. It was evolving, shifting like the shadows around them, and Alex Mercer was ready to face it. But just as they prepared to counter the attack, a sudden power surge plunged the room into darkness, plunging them into silence, silence heavy with anticipation and dread. The voice of the enemy was close, and the next move would decide everything. The echo chamber was closing in. The question remained, could trust survive in the shadows? The room was dim, the only illumination coming from the weak glow of a street lamp filtering through the cracked blinds. Alex Mercer sat motionless, the weight of silence pressing on him like a tangible force. His eyes, sharp and restless, were locked onto the cracked mirror propped against the peeling wall. The fragmentation of his reflection seemed to mock the turmoil within. Each fissure in the glass was a reminder of the fractured self he was struggling to piece back together. His breathing was shallow, punctuated by the faint hum of the air filter overhead, a mechanical drone that filled the emptiness but did nothing to ease his mind. Outside, the city breathed in a rhythm alien to the stillness of his sanctuary. The distant wail of sirens, the murmur of late-night traffic, and the occasional bark of a stray dog created a symphony of dissonance that mirrored the chaos in his head. Alex closed his eyes, trying to summon a sense of clarity. But the voices, his own voice, distorted and weaponized, goad relentlessly in his mind. They whispered lies, half-truths, and accusations that gnawed at the edges of his sanity. He reached for his digital recorder on the table nearby. The small device was both a lifeline and a tormentor. It held the key to his past and the weapon used against him. In the quiet of the room, he hit play. The recorder spat out a series of clips, some familiar, some altered beyond recognition. His voice, once a symbol of authority and trust, now twisted into a cacophony of deceit. Each iteration was a betrayal, a manipulation designed to erode his identity. The subtle inflections and pauses that once conveyed sincerity were warped into sinister commands and false confessions. A sudden knock at the door fractured the oppressive silence. Alex hesitated before opening it to reveal Mara Quinn, her eyes sharp but filled with empathy. She stepped inside, carrying a portable console loaded with data. "I found something," she said quietly, setting the device down. "Evidence that might help us understand exactly how deep this manipulation goes." Together, they listened to the recordings again, this time with a new perspective. Maya pointed out anomalies in the waveforms, subtle digital fingerprints left by the hackers. "They didn't just steal your voice," she explained. "They reassembled it like a puzzle, inserting pieces where they wanted to create doubt and fear." Alex swallowed hard, the truth settling over him like a cold fog. "So much of what I remember. How do I know it's real?" Maya's gaze was steady. "We'll find out. But you have to hold on to what you know is true, who you are beneath all this." Their conversation was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Detective Reinhold emerged from the shadows of the hallway, his rugged face marked by fatigue and conflict. The tension in the room was palpable as they exchanged wary glances. "I'm here to help," Holt said, voice low. "But I need you to trust me, even if it's hard." Alex nodded slowly, the fragile alliance a small beacon in the growing darkness. The three of them sat in the cramped space, sharing stories, data, and suspicions. The lines between ally and adversary blurred, but for the first time in weeks, Alex felt a flicker of hope. Later that night, he walked the rain-slicked streets alone. Neon signs buzzed and flickered above, casting fractured light onto the wet pavement. The city was alive, but Alex felt isolated, trapped in a maze of sound and memory. The voices in his head rose and fell like a haunting chorus, some real, some implanted. They challenged his grasp on reality, forcing him to question every thought and feeling. His reflection shimmered in puddles, distorted and elusive. The man staring back was both himself and a stranger, a victim and a survivor. The echoes within threatened to consume him, but beneath the paranoia lay a core of determination. He had been shattered, manipulated, and hunted. But Alex Mercer was still here, and as the night deepened, so did his resolve to reclaim the voice that was truly his own. The echoes would not silence him, not yet. Outside the safe house, dawn crept over the horizon. Alex stood by the window, watching the city awaken. His mind was a battlefield, memories colliding with doubts. Yet, beneath the noise, a single truth remained clear. Identity was not just in the voice, but in the choices made, despite the chaos. He turned away from the window, ready to face whatever came next. The war for his identity was far from over, but he would fight it on his terms. The echo chamber of his mind was loud, but Alex Mercer was louder. He just had to find his voice again. The city pulsed around me, a living organism thrumming with fragmented voices and distorted echoes. Standing at the corner of 5th and Monroe, I felt the dissonance as sharply as a physical blow. Every passerby's voice was a thread in the sprawling web of sound that cloaked the urban sprawl, but now those threads were frayed, tangled in deception and doubt. The neon signs above sputtered flickers of light, their glow casting long shadows on the slick pavement, a mirror to the fractured trust we all now navigated. I inhaled the damp air, heavy with the scent of rain and exhaust, and tried to reconcile the world I had known with this one where voices, once the most intimate proof of identity, had become weapons. The very thing that once connected us now drove wedges between friend and foe, certainty and suspicion. It was the new reality, and I was at its volatile center, inside the quiet refuge of a small cafe. Maya Lin and Detective Ryan Holt joined me at a corner table, their faces drawn and marked by the sleepless nights we'd endured together. The soft murmur of conversations and the clatter of cups surrounded us, a muted symphony of life continuing despite the turmoil. Between us lay a small array of devices, each humming with encrypted data, streams of fragile lifeline in this era of sound warfare. Maya's eyes met mine, sharp and resolute despite the exhaustion. "It's not just about us anymore," she said quietly. "Voice hacking isn't just a tool for personal attacks or political sabotage. It's reshaping how people communicate, how they trust or don't." Detective Holt nodded slowly, his usual skepticism tempered by the clarity we'd all gained. "The agency's scrambling to keep up, but the damage is widespread. People don't know if the voices on their phones, their security systems, even their loved ones are real. It's an epidemic of doubt." That doubt gnawed at me. I'd lived it firsthand, the betrayal of my own voice turned against me, the suffocating paranoia of never knowing what was genuine. But I also knew the danger of surrendering to that fear. If trust dissolved completely, the society we tried to protect would crumble from within. Our conversation was abruptly punctuated by the crackling static of a nearby television screen. The broadcast showed a government official addressing the nation, their voice steady but the image glitching intermittently. Accusations and denials echoed in manipulated overlays, a haunting chorus of truth and lies blurred beyond distinction. Outside, a crowd gathered around public monitors in the square, faces illuminated by flickering light. Some wore expressions of disbelief, others anger. The collective anxiety was palpable, a mirror to the fractured state of our society. Even the simplest conversations were now exercises in caution, each word weighed against potential subversion. As the broadcast ended, the crowd dispersed slowly, the murmurs of uncertainty trailing behind them like a specter. I found myself back in my apartment later that evening, the silence both a comfort and a torment. Alone, I cupped a small speaker and played a recording, my own voice, unaltered, untainted by digital sabotage. The sound filled the room, steady and familiar. I gazed out the rain-streaked window, my reflection merging with the blurred city lights beyond. The rhythmic tapping of raindrops was a metronome marking the passage of a world caught between past certainties and future doubts. In this fragile boundary between self and echo, I wrestled with my own identity, what had been stolen, what remained, and what I needed to reclaim. The revelations of Evelyn Cross's conspiracy had shaken the foundations of trust, but they also ignited a spark. Public discourse ignited over the ethical and security implications of voice manipulation. Movements arose demanding reform, transparency, and new methods of authentication that could withstand the insidiousness of sound-based sabotage. Yet, for all the public outcry, the path forward was uncertain. How do you restore trust when the very essence of communication, the human voice, can no longer be taken at face value? That question haunted me like a persistent echo as I prepared to face the challenges of this new reality. I understood now that my fight was far from over. The battles would no longer always be in shadows or encrypted channels. They would unfold in every conversation, every connection, every moment where voice met ear. And in this world, the line between ally and adversary remained perilously thin. Still, as the night deepened outside my window, I felt a cautious resolve settle within me. The echoes of my past had shaped me, but they would not define me. I would navigate this fractured soundscape, seeking clarity amid the noise, striving to rebuild the fragile bridges of trust that bound us all. Because, in the end, identity was more than just a voice. It was the courage to be heard, to be believed, and to believe in others, even when the echoes whispered otherwise. And so, as the city's restless heartbeat continued beneath the rain, I stepped forward into the uncertain future, ready to face whatever voices awaited. The world had changed, and so had I, but amidst the chaos and distortion, one truth remained clear. The fight for authenticity, for trust, was the fight of our time. And I was no longer just a man running from shadows, was a guardian of the fragile human voice itself. The echoes would never be silent, and neither would I. The city stretched out below me, a sea of shimmering neon and glass, alive with the hum of 1,000 conversations, 1,000 voices weaving the fabric of an existence I once took for granted. Now, each syllable carried a weight, a potential weapon in the invisible war, fought not with guns or bombs, but with echoes and whispers. I stood on the rooftop, the cool wind cutting through my jacket, carrying the faintest fragments of sound snatches of voices that might have been mine, or twisted facsimiles crafted by unseen hands. The dusk painted the sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges, a fragile beauty that seemed at odds with the chaos threading through every moment, every breath. In the months since the conspiracy unraveled, since Evelyn Cross's network was exposed and her plot foiled, I had cleared my name in the cold light of official records. Yet, the victory felt hollow, a brittle veneer over the deep fracture left in my sense of self. The recordings that had been twisted to frame me still haunted the edges of my mind, their lies echoing louder than any truth. Trust was a currency I could no longer spend freely, neither in others nor in the voice I used to claim who I was. Maya had been relentless, a beacon of clarity amid the fog. I remembered the nights huddled over her cluttered workstation, the glow of monitors casting sharp shadows on her determined face. The hum of machines comforting. Mechanical heartbeats filled the room as she filtered through layers of corrupted data, searching for threads of truth in a tapestry woven with deceit. Her quiet strength grounded me, even as I wrestled with doubts that gnawed at my mind. "We can't let them win," she said one evening, eyes flicking between spectral waveforms on the screen. "Not just for us, but for everyone." Her words echoed in my thoughts now, a reminder that the fight extended beyond my fractured identity. The technology that had once been a tool for security had become a weapon of destabilization, its power wielded by those who sought to rewrite reality one voice at a time. It was a chilling legacy, a warning etched into the fabric of our digital age. Detective Ryan Holt's unexpected alliance had been another surprise in this tangled journey. I recalled our conversation in that quiet cafe, the low murmur of other patrons providing a fragile shield against the outside world. His rugged features, lined with fatigue and something like regret, softened as we spoke not as adversaries, but as men caught in the same storm. "You're not alone in this," he admitted, voice low, eyes searching mine for understanding. It was a rare moment of genuine connection in a world fractured by suspicion. But even as we forged these fragile bonds, the future remained uncertain. I had begun recording my own voice once more, a deliberate act of reclaiming control. Sitting in the darkened room, bathed in the cool glow of the screen. I modulated my tone, imprinting subtle distinctions into the waveform, a silent defiance against those who would twist my words. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the unspoken fears that our battle was far from over. The irony was cruel. The voice that defined me was also the greatest vulnerability I bore. In a world where sound could be hacked, copied, and weaponized, identity was a fragile construct, perpetually at risk of being shattered and reshaped by others. Each day became an exercise in vigilance, a careful navigation through a landscape where every whisper might conceal a threat. Yet, amid the shadows, there was resolve. The experience had changed me, irrevocably etched deep into my bones was a cautious hope that, despite the fractures, I could piece together a new sense of self. Not the unshakable agent I had been, but someone tempered by doubt and hardened by truth. Someone who understood the precarious balance between connection and isolation. As the night deepened, the city's cacophony dimmed to a distant murmur, and I let the weight of the moment settle. The future was a murky horizon, but I would face it not as a victim of echoes, but as a man determined to define his own voice in a world that sought to silence it. And somewhere in that uncertain future, I hoped, lay the possibility of trust restored and identity reclaimed. The wind shifted again, carrying with it a faint, distorted whisper, half threat, half memory. I closed my eyes, steeling myself. The echo chamber was vast, but I would navigate it. I must.